Torah Resource is made possible through the generous donations of people like you. If you would like to help us continue to produce this kind of material, please consider making a donation at TorahResource.com. Okay, today we are looking at the Apostolic portion, the New Testament portion for Vayera, which is, let's see here. It is Luke 8:40 through 56, and let's take a look at this passage. I'm going to read the passage. I'm going to read the whole thing. So Luke 8:40 is where we're starting. I'm in the ESV. Now, when Yeshua returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Yeshua's feet, he implored him to come to his house. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. And as Yeshua went, the people pressed around him. And there was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Yeshua said, "Who was it that touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you." But Yeshua said, "Someone touched me, for I perceived that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." But Yeshua, on hearing this, answered him, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, "Do not weep. She is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up at once, and he directed that something should be given to her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. So as we read this passage, as I read this passage in preparation to talk about it, and I'm not going to talk for very long, I was considering why this passage would be chosen. Now, I'll give you just a very quick background on this. The Torah portion was historically coupled with a passage of the scriptures that of the rest of the Tanakh, the rest of the Old Testament, in order to remember a certain passage of the Torah. And the way that I have been taught this is that it was because there were times when the Jews were not allowed to read the Torah, so they would choose a different passage from the Tanakh that would remind them of the passage that was being read that week, the passage from the Torah. And oftentimes we'll see in the Haftorah, the passage from the rest of the Tanakh, that there are certain words or there are certain themes or things like that that couple well with the Torah portion. However, the apostolic portion, obviously being from the New Testament, was not chosen by the rabbis. It was chosen by various people. And in this instance, on the Torah Resource page, it was chosen by my father, Tim Hegg. And so the question is, why did he choose this passage to go with the Torah portion that we see, Vayera? And so Vayera goes from Genesis 18:1 through the end of 22, or 22, that's not actually right. It goes through, let's see here, Vayera goes 18:1 through 22:24 rather. And so why was this passage chosen? I would expect that the passage from Luke would actually be chosen for something like the purity laws in Leviticus, right? The woman has this discharge. So you would expect to see this passage perhaps chosen for when a woman it's that time of the month and she touches something, then that thing becomes unclean. There's all these laws that are built around this time of the month. And so we would expect perhaps to see this passage from Luke to be chosen there. there? Well, there are, in my opinion, there are possibly three reasons why this passage would be chosen. So the first one, and probably the most unlikely one, is the fact that the child that is raised from the dead is in fact dead. And there is a rabbinic story or a rabbinic idea that Abraham was charged to during the Akedah, which is the passage in Genesis 22. Abraham was told to kill Isaac and to sacrifice Isaac. So he takes him up on the mountain, and the question is posed: what did Abraham think was going on here? What did Abraham think was going to happen? The rabbis hypothesized that Abraham believed that Isaac would die, but then God would raise him from the dead. And the reason they believe this is because the promise was already given to Abraham that the covenant would come through his son Isaac, not through Ishmael. And I'm sure that you remember in Genesis 17 how Abraham negotiates with God over Ishmael, whether or not Ishmael can be the heir who is going to carry on the covenant. He says, "No, Lord, please take it. Let Ishmael be the one." And God says, "No, but there's a son that is going to come from your loins who is going to be your heir." And this heir is Isaac. And so the point is that when Isaac comes up with Abraham on the mountain, Abraham's going to sacrifice him. What was in Abraham's mind here? God has promised him that he was going to give him the son. He gave him the son. God has promised him that the covenant is going to go through Isaac, and yet God is telling him to kill his son. And so what did Abraham believe about this? Well, the idea is that Abraham believed that he would kill his son, but then God would raise him from the dead. And so it could be that the passage that was chosen here in Luke 8 was chosen because the child is dead, and then Yeshua raises him from the dead. And so this might remind us of the fact that Isaac is told to be sacrificed here, what was going to happen. So this could be one of the things that would spark our memory of this passage. Another, and probably I think the most likely, is the idea that Sarah had this problem of being barren or not having a child in her old age, and she laughs. And we see this in the end of the Luke 8 passage, right? So let's start in 52 again. "And all were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, 'Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping.' And they laughed at her, knowing that she was dead." So in that case, let's come back here now to Genesis, and let's go 18. Give me just a second. Let's read this passage, 18:10 through 15. Sorry, 18:10 through 15 says, "The Lord said, 'I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son, and Sarah will listen.' And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah." In other words, she was not able to have children anymore. So Sarah laughed to herself. So we see the same thing here. The crowd is laughing because God has said something, Yeshua has said something, and now also interesting is that we have the angel here is said to be Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So in both cases, we have a physical incarnation of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh on earth telling someone something, and the people laugh at him, right? Or laugh because of what he says. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you. About this time next year, Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh, for she was afraid." He said, "No, but you did laugh." So once again, we have this notion. Sarah desperately wants something to happen. In this case, it's that she wants this child, and the way of women has stopped with her. The covenant's supposed to go through this child, right? So she has this issue that is happening, and in the same way, this other woman in the Apostolic scriptures, she has this discharge that is preventing her from really living at this point, right? She spent all of her money on physicians, so on and so forth. And so she reaches out and she touches Yeshua, and she is healed. In the same way, the angel, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, comes and speaks to Abraham and tells him, he fixes this problem that Sarah has, that it's not a problem for God, right? It's going to work out for her. So I think that's probably the main parallel here within the passages. The Luke 8 passage, I think, was chosen specifically because of the idea that these people laughed. We have a physical manifestation, or a physical representation of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh here on earth. Yeshua is God incarnate, and therefore he is on earth, and we seem to have a pre-incarnate Yeshua in the Genesis 18 passage. In both instances, the people laugh when he talks or says something about what he's going to do. Okay, so and then the final reason that I think we might see this passage coupled is because of the seed. Okay, so let's go to Genesis 22. So Genesis 22. Let's just go to 22, and we're going to go down first to verse 8. Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both on their way. So first of all, we see this probably would not resonate with the idea of the seed that is promised in Genesis 3:8, or I'm sorry, Genesis 3:8, Genesis 3, yeah, is it 8? Anyway, it's Genesis 3. So it probably would not resonate or connect directly with the seed. However, then we have in verse 18, let's go to verse 18, we have this promise again, and in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. So God promises that Abraham says that God will provide for himself a lamb, and then we have this promise again, the Abrahamic promise, in your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed. We have this again in verse 18. And Yeshua proves himself to be this seed in our Luke passage. Not only does someone touch him, and instead of him becoming unclean, which is what should have happened, she's healed and becomes clean. And so this can only be done, obviously, out of miraculous means. And then also, you have the fact that Yeshua raises someone from the dead. Once again, Yeshua proves himself to be the coming seed, the one who would that has command over life, the one who has the ability to raise from the dead. And throughout the scriptures, we also have Yeshua telling people that their sins are forgiven, something that only God can do. And so you have Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh incarnate, once again, proven in this passage that he has the keys to life and death, and that he is able to raise from the dead. Something that only God has the ability to do. And therefore, it is possible that this passage was also chosen for that reason, that we see a confirmation of the seed, the Abrahamic promise come to fruition in this person who is Yeshua. And so we could talk at length about both passages, both the Torah passage, the Genesis 22 passage, but also, which is the Akedah and the culmination of the Akedah and the restating of the Abrahamic promise, in your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed, a theme that runs through the apostolic scriptures, right, and something that Paul calls the gospel in Galatians 3:8, when it says, the gospel was preached beforehand to Abraham when it was said, in your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed. But then also, we see here this idea that Yeshua is in fact that seed who has the command of life and death here on earth. Okay, so those are my thoughts for this passage. I know it was quick, but this is one of the reasons that I think that my father chose this Luke passage to be connected to the Genesis passage. And by the way, once again, I think that the best reason that this passage was chosen was because of the laughter, right? Because the crowd laughs when Yeshua says that she is sleeping, whereas the crowd laughs Sarah laughs at the angel, who I believe is Yeshua incarnate. So both times we have Yeshua being the focal point of the person laughing at something, and Sarah laughs at the angel of the Lord, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, when he says that she will have a child. I hope that this has sparked something for you, and I hope that these ideas will maybe help you be able to formulate more questions, more ideas in your studies and in your teachings as you go forward. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.